Hello, I'm Alicia Barry. Welcome to the Business Summer Series as we take a look at some of the biggest stories that made headlines in the past year. Coming up on the program, Charging Forward. How do apartment owners tackle the problem of powering up electric vehicles on common property?
The cost, in our experience, can range from sort of 2 to 4 times that of a home installation.
And cracking corruption, calls for Labor to strengthen protections for those who risk everything to call out wrongdoing.
No government can stand and say that they support whistleblowers whilst they are engaged in the prosecution of whistleblowers.
Also on the program, putting a price on nature, an Australian accounting first in valuing the environment.
Many of the insurance companies and the large pension funds are very much focused on natural capital as an asset class.
Selling second-hand clothes has become big business worth billions of dollars globally. Now Australian brands that make the garments want a cut of the action. What previously ended up in landfill is now being resold, meaning lower prices for customers and higher profits for retailers, as Amelia Terzon reports.
Customers at this boutique are returning worn clothes.
Gorgeous, look at that.
Owner Tara Rowe is giving them a store credit before she attempts to resell these garments.
And if things don't sell, we will just be recycling them or donating them.
This chain store is also reselling its clothing.
Selling recycled clothes is nothing new. This is an alternative way for people to be able to do it and take control of the life cycle of our own products.
Globally, the second-hand fashion industry is growing. Consignment stores like this are increasingly popular.
I look for quality things that I'm going to wear for the rest of my life that I can't necessarily afford in the shops.
The poor uni student I am, second-hand clothing gets you far.
More Australians are reselling their clothing online.
About 25% of wardrobes are going to be second-hand in the next few years. And that means if brands aren't involved in the second-hand business, they're going to lose their customers.
Fashion experts say that there's lots of pros to this model. It has sustainability elements and because it keeps clothing out of landfill. However, there are some potential downsides.
If we're unintentionally going to have results where people just consume more, that's not a sustainable initiative.
Tara Rose says she's giving high quality clothes a longer life.
All of the items that are being returned to us could live on for many years in someone else's wardrobe rather than sitting dormant in a closet.
Ensuring that everything old really is new again.
The new government has been urged to give more protections to Australians who risk their careers to speak out about wrongdoing. There are renewed calls for a central body to be set up to investigate complaints and compensate those who suffer financial losses. Nasim Kadem reports.
Jeff Morris knew he faced a David and Goliath battle when he blew the whistle on corrupt practices at the Commonwealth Bank. In 2008, he told the corporate watchdog a financial planner was defrauding clients and CBA was covering it up.
I saw a great number of old, vulnerable people who'd been taken advantage of and were going to have their lives destroyed.
The revelations led to the Banking Royal Commission, but Jeff lost his job and his marriage broke down.
It put enormous strain on my family and my wife left the home at the same time that I was diagnosed with PTSD.
Jeff is joining others in calling for the new Labor government to boost protections for whistleblowers. Some reforms were introduced in 2019 to protect people making complaints against the corporate sector, but experts say there's still major flaws.
Our laws are still very reliant on whistleblowers themselves having the legal resources, the money to be able to go to court to fight for their own protection. And a big gap is the lack of a whistleblower protection authority.
Back in 2017, a parliamentary inquiry called for a central body to investigate complaints and compensate those who suffer financial losses from speaking out.
People ought to be able to front up, honestly make a public interest disclosure and know that they are fully protected and there can be no repercussions for what it is that they've alleged.
The Senator has written to Attorney General Mark Dreyfus calling for criminal charges to be dropped against Richard Boyle. The former ATO employee blew the whistle on the aggressive debt recovery practices internally before going public.
No government can stand and say that they support whistleblowers whilst they are engaged in the prosecution of whistleblowers.
Human rights advocates also want the federal government to drop cases against Mr Boyle and 2 other whistleblowers. Former military lawyer David McBride, who spoke up about alleged war crimes in Afghanistan, and Bernard Collaery, who allegedly revealed spying on Timor-Leste's government.
It's deeply concerning, deeply troubling in a democracy like ours that people who've done the right thing, who've spoken up about wrongdoing, are on trial.
Human rights lawyer Kieran Pender says Australia is falling behind other countries that have far better protections.
In the US, there are financial schemes that compensate and reward whistleblowers for their important role in speaking up.
The Attorney General Mark Dreyfus hasn't gone as far as saying he'll drop the prosecutions against whistleblowers, but a spokesman says the minister will examine what needs to be done to ensure Australia has proper laws to protect those who speak out. Mr Morris says the wrongdoers, not the whistleblowers, should be the ones who are looking over their shoulders.
If we provide a decent system of whistleblower protection and compensation, such that people would be free to come forward, there would be hundreds of people coming forward instead of the odd 1 or 2 here and there.
But until such a body is introduced, he says the country will lose out because people will think twice about blowing the whistle.
Australian agriculture has been on a bull run. Commodity prices are rising across the board. Production is strong and the weather forecast has been looking broadly favourable. But many farmers say they've got to spend money to make money as their costs of production shoot through the roof because of the war in Ukraine. National Rural reporter Clint Jasper has more.
This Victorian dairy farm is bucking a lot of trends.
Come on!
Melanie and her husband Paul have recently joined an industry that's shrunk by 20% in just 5 years. And while nationally milk production is falling, it isn't at this dairy.
Despite significantly increased input costs, and I can't stress enough significantly increased input costs, I think overall we're set for a good year.
The national commodity forecaster ABARES says dairy farm incomes are up 35% this season as prices near record highs. But in the coming year, the costs of production are set to grow.
To think back 5 years ago to now for an equivalent kind of dairy ration, we're probably looking at an increase of perhaps 100%.
That's because grain prices are also sitting at record highs. This patch of canola is a small part of 3.4 million hectares of crops being grown by farmers across the country as they try to take advantage of a global shortage of oilseeds.
The price of canola was so high, I wanted to have a go at it.
Grain and oilseed prices have been pushed to record highs because of the war in Ukraine, and it's done the same thing to fuel and fertiliser.
For example, last year I paid on average $7.50 for urea for the farm, and I thought that was very dear. This year it's currently averaging at about $1,300.
ABARES figures show farmers produced a record-breaking $81 billion worth of produce this season. And high grain prices are the main reason that number is expected to stay above $80 billion in the next 12 months. On the livestock side of things, the near-weekly records we saw broken at sale yards like this one are likely to be less frequent, although prices will remain strong.
Look at 35 away, 35 down they go, Harry Carl!
I think the long-range forecasts for that are pretty good, saying that the American markets are taking a fair bit more lamb. On the cattle sides of things, we've definitely seen an increase, unlike anyone thought was going to happen.
Across the bush, a run of good seasons has seen farmers invest more in their businesses, from building new cattle and sheep yards to constructing wool sheds and buying new equipment.
The last time that happened, I would have imagined, and I wasn't alive, but would have been the wool boom in the 60s. So this is effectively the same scenario.
In towns like Hamilton, where agriculture makes up well over half of the economy, there are many signs that investment is flowing past the farm gate.
If you talk to any car dealer, machinery dealer, they'll tell you they've been having great seasons too.
While nationally, farms continue to struggle to find workers, newcomers have found long-term jobs in this town.
We've seen new sporting teams starting up, particularly in the younger sector. We're seeing a lot more smaller businesses start up as well.
When farmers have money, regional areas flourish. When farmers don't have money, you'll see people disappear.
Farmers enjoying the good times while they last.
Across the country, builders are going bust, including names such as ProBuild and Condev, leaving thousands out of work and homeowners with big debts. While construction firms still in business are busier than ever, those that have signed fixed-price contracts are losing money because the costs have since skyrocketed. Big developers think many more companies will collapse in the next 18 months. Nasim Karem again.
As the nation's builders go under, the dreams of would-be homeowners are shattered.
It's massive. It's heartbreaking. The first quote I've already had, I'll be out of pocket $180,000 just to finish the build. It's just devastating. It's just wrecked my life.
San Remo resident Donna Taylor was left with a rotting timber frame when Langford Jones Homes collapsed at the end of June, owing millions of dollars.
There's so many more people that are like me that it's just ruined and just feel like there's just no justice.
The founder of Langford Jones Homes claims his family have also lost everything, including their properties. He told ABC News the problem is fixed price contracts and costs going up by 30 to 40%. He said builders throughout Australia are just hanging on. The boss of developer Meriton says a lot of builders locked themselves in before material costs surged.
I hope that as many as possible will remain, and I hope they learn not to work on such small margins.
The list of construction firms collapsing since the end of last year has been growing by the day. And unlike previous industry disasters, this one's happened in the midst of a boom fuelled by pandemic support measures. COVID disruptions to supply chains and the war in Ukraine pushed up the price of materials and made them harder to source. Steel, beams, sections, timber, windows and terracotta tiles have all skyrocketed, along with labour costs. 9% of construction firms are expected to go bust over the next financial year.
I believe the second tier, third tier construction company will be very vulnerable. And I think the first tier construction company, they will survive, although maybe the margin will be smaller than what they thought it will be.
Big builders haven't been as badly hit because they can negotiate better prices. Gold Coast developer Suhail Abedian says the industry's latest woes are not just due to unsustainable costs, but also massive greed.
Everybody would like to have more and more profit, and for that, they increase the prices without understanding that ultimately it will backfire on every single part of the industry, and we see that now.
Builders are also getting squeezed with higher borrowing costs.
If there will be a recession, it will be only for a very short period. So, who knows? The Reserve Bank is trying to go in step with America. America has a huge problem, much bigger than ours.
Mr Triguboff is calling for more migration and planning approvals to be eased. He says governments need the housing market to be strong.
Now the government wants the prices to go up because if we don't build, they don't get stamp duty, they don't get all the money that we pay them.
For now, the Reserve Bank is continuing to raise interest rates against a backdrop of falling house prices. And that's left some Australians who recently got into the property market with the help of the Home Builder Grant in over their heads. Queensland couple Anthony and Stacey Ashton built what they thought would be their dream home in Cedar Creek. The construction company they used went bust the day before their wedding.
It was quite stressful and quite upsetting. There were a few tears.
The couple tried desperately to find another builder to still be eligible for the grant, but they missed out. Now they claim they're paying extra to fix defects.
There's no gentlemen's agreements anymore. There's no pride in people's work. All you can rely on is contracts these days, and that's the sad thing about the market at the moment is every promise is broken.
Broken promises and broken dreams.
The federal government is pushing ahead with reforms to get more Australians driving electric cars. While much of the focus has been on how to bring down the price of EVs, there's another social equity dilemma that's holding millions of people back. Installing chargers in apartments is not only costly, but a logistical headache for owners, let alone renters. Amelia Turzon reports.
This power cord is the only way that Mauricio Perez could charge his electric car at home. He rents a third-storey apartment and his Tesla is down in the building's car park below.
Given the safety issues that are involved, it's probably not acceptable. What if someone trips over the cable?
There's no charger near Mauricio's car, despite him requesting one.
I just wanted a simple power point, but even that involved getting access to the mains and then putting in a circuit and getting an electrician.
Works in car parks inside high-rise buildings need approval from the entity that represents owners. Most body corporates only meet once a year and they need to vote on who pays for any new infrastructure.
It would just take too much time to do. It'd probably happen within about 4 or 5 years, but maybe not within my tenancy life cycle.
With 55,000 Australians now owning EVs, tech companies are installing more personal chargers.
It's typically 95% in freestanding homes and 5% in apartments.
Russ Shepherd's heart sinks when he gets a call from potential customers in apartments.
The biggest challenge is navigating the body corporate approvals to be able to get the point where one of the installers can turn up and actually install the charger.
Peter Morton's body corporate voted to install 2 chargers for residents to share. At least 80 people here want to buy EVs in the coming years.
Really, the only other practical option is to explore the potential to have EV charging boxes within your allocated car space.
There's 250 units in the building and just 2 chargers cost $20,000.
Complexity here is not just cost and commitment, it's actually having the capacity in the building to power.
Alan Liang runs an install company that also does apartment jobs.
Residents will have their own meter. It's very expensive to have to wire all the way from their meter. The cost, in our experience, can range from sort of 2 to 4 times that of a home installation.
From October 2023, new high-rise buildings will need to allow EV charging, but this doesn't help the residents who are living in those that are already built.
EVs give people access to cheaper fuel, and it's something that apartment owners shouldn't not have access to just because they live in an apartment.
2.2 million Australians live in apartment complexes. Many of them are renters. Advocates say if we don't ensure they all have home charging, then they could be left behind.
If we want them to have access to electric vehicles and to make their contribution to reducing climate change, then this most definitely is an equity issue.
Mauricio Perez is making do with public charging.
So we're pulling up to the council car park right now.
It's a game of potluck, especially on Saturday mornings.
Yes, there is nobody there.
He runs errands while his car fills up, but he'd love the convenience of charging at home, helping the climate as Australia powers ahead.
The cryptocurrency market went through a roller coaster ride toward the end of 2022 after the collapse of a major digital currency exchange. Billions of dollars reportedly went missing from FTX, which is now bankrupt and currently being probed by regulators for potential breaches of criminal law. David Chow explains.
It's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
I don't think so. And I'm never wrong about this stuff. Never.
Sometimes it doesn't hurt to be more like Larry. Investors worldwide have lost billions of dollars after one of the world's biggest crypto exchanges, FTX, filed for bankruptcy along with 130 of its related entities. And the man behind it? It's founder Sam Bankman-Fried, who lost most of his crypto fortune in a week. His downfall began when reports circulated that FTX's finances weren't as strong as it claimed. The company allegedly funneled customer deposits to its sister company called Alameda Research, which it then poured into bad investments like hedge fund 3 Arrows and the crypto bank Celsius, which collapsed earlier this year.
I'm trying to think of a good example of a trade where I've lost a ton of money. Well, I don't know. I probably don't want to go into specifics too much with that.
An internal document was leaked, suggesting FTX doesn't have many real assets. In fact, its main asset was a digital token that it created out of thin air called FTT. Rival exchange Binance didn't like the sound of that, so it decided to sell all its FTT holdings. That caused investors to panic, and they tried to withdraw billions of dollars in just 3 days. Then, in a surprise move, Binance tried to rescue the company with a takeover bid, which it then tore up after reports FTX had mishandled customer funds.
The industry goes through ups and downs. We have one or maybe even more bad players in the industry, but the industry is still growing.
Well, actually, it's shrunk. The price of Bitcoin has plummeted to its lowest level in 2 years, while the entire cryptocurrency market has shed more than 70% in 12 months. And after FTX went bankrupt, around $1 billion went missing, apparently the result of a hack, and billions more disappeared a couple of days later. Police in the Bahamas are investigating whether there was any criminal misconduct, and its corporate watchdog has since frozen the assets of FTX. In the US, regulators are also looking into whether FTX broke any laws, as the calls for tougher crypto regulation get louder.
The crypto market was under pressure before being rocked by fear of contagion from the FTX implosion. Bitcoin's price plunged by almost 2/3 in 2022, down from around $46,000 in January to lows of around $15,000 in November when FTX filed for bankruptcy. The digital coin's drop defied the belief it could be used as an inflation hedge, so-called digital gold. But as news FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried was arrested, Bitcoin started to pick up again, rallying 10% off its lows by the end of December. With the latest State of the Climate report showing Australia continues to warm, there are growing questions about the future profitability of Australian companies. A new way of valuing nature may help solve that problem, and it could soon be rolled out across the country, as Gareth Hutchins explains.
Known for its ecological diversity and rich cultural heritage, the Burnett Mary region in Queensland is now part of an Australian first. Scientists here say they figured out how to measure nature in a way that could change the world.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of what we've done, and we've got a lot more to do and a lot more to help others.
Sheila Charlesworth's team have counted the region's natural assets, from animals to trees, and recorded the quality of its soils and river systems.
Now we actually have the baseline data for all our assets within our region.
The audit took about 18 months. It will be used to track the health of biodiversity in the region to see if it's degrading or improving.
Some of these assets are very important because if you maintain the biodiversity of areas, then you have a more healthy landscape, and that is better for farming and better for other activities.
The methodology was developed by a company that wants businesses to realise they'll need to start investing in the environment to remain profitable.
Beyond climate, there is a lot of loss and damage also happening to nature, and there is a big wave of enthusiasm and concern more broadly around how rainforests and native fauna species and the condition of rivers, etc., are actually also being impacted by economic activities.
The Burnett Mary region is made up of about 67,000 square kilometres. It's one of 54 natural resource management areas in Australia.
Tell me how significant this environmental audit is that's occurred up in Queensland.
Well, I think this is going to be a game changer. I really do.
Former Treasury Secretary Ken Henry says what they've done in Queensland will allow financial markets to put a price on improvements in nature over time, which will see billions of dollars eventually pouring into environmental projects to regenerate the planet.
We don't have environmental markets yet. I say yet because they are starting to emerge. So we're seeing them firstly in carbon credits, and we're also now seeing the emergence of biodiversity credits. These credits will attach a financial value to the improvement in environmental condition.
The organisation that helped to fund the Queensland audit says environmental markets will have to properly price future risks to ensure they're valuing nature correctly.
A carbon offset or a carbon credit that's not taking into account the risk of fire and flood has to be worth less in our view. Like if a fire roars through a landscape that's been regenerated, then effectively we're back to square one and having to start again.
Analysts say as people come to realise the damage we're doing to the environment, interest for these products has been growing.
Many of the insurance companies and the large pension funds, particularly the Canadian pension funds, and one or two of the Australian funds are very much focused on natural capital as an asset class.
Those behind the Queensland audit say it will be rolled out across the country.
I am very confident within a few years we will have environmental condition accounts of this quality being produced for all 54 NRMs right around Australia, and that will be a major achievement.
An achievement other nations are watching closely.
I've had calls from over 20 countries who are very keen to actually discuss how this is rolled out.
Using the market system to save capitalism from itself.
Gareth Hutchins there. And that's all from this episode of the Business Summer Series. For more business stories, head to the ABC News website or catch up anytime on iView. The Business will return on air weeknights from January 30. I'm Alicia Barry. Thanks for watching.